You'll have a new skill to learn in your 60s. Um, so this guy Charlie Kirk that got killed, assassinated, murdered, however you want to describe it. I knew nothing about him. Just completely, he was not on my radar, not on my bingo card, nothing. And I just was like, and so I still read the paper, not paper. I mean, I read it online. I'm not a savage, but all the art, yeah. There's Gail going, paper is the way God intended newspapers to be read. Um, yes, um, and all the stuff was all about him being it was a political action committee. He'd helped Donald Trump get elected. He was doing this. And I went, oh, okay, he's a politician. And I didn't bring it up at all, okay, because I don't bring politics into the church because I'm Lutheran. And we have history with bringing politics into the church. Um, if you remember Martin Niemöller, the guy who, they came for the trade unionists, but I was not a trade unionist, so I said nothing. They came for these people, they came for the Jews, but I wasn't a Jew, so I said nothing. Then they came for me, and there was no one to speak up for me. Lutheran pastor who lived through Germany. Niemöller was a devout conservative Christian, hated the direction of Germany, was a decorated U-boat commander from World War I, voted for the Nazi Party 3 times. He thought this was going to be great. And he was great with them right up until the Nazi Party said, now we're going to change the church. And all of a sudden he went, hold it. And they went, and he was like, so this is what authoritarian government looks like. Oh, they're going to control every area of life. And, and at that point, that's when he ended up Hitler's personal prisoner and spent the rest of until he was released by um, the Allied invasion. He spent the rest of the time in concentration camps and became a speaker and everything else. Churches got seriously divided by politics in that run up, the way we look at it from American perspective, the run up to World War II. So there would be like one pastor who was going, yeah, I think we should lean into politics and lean in this direction. And one Lutheran pastor was going, no, I think we should lean in that direction. And they'd both be at the same church. And so one would be in the pulpit and he would be preaching, and the other one would stand at the altar and lead the liturgy at the exact same time at the top of their lungs. And the church sat, one side was in favor of Pastor Bob, the other side was in favor of Pastor Ralph. I didn't make up German names. And then they would sing hymns, okay? And one guy would have like the brass choir leading Advent hymns, and the other guy would have the organ leading A Mighty Fortress Is Our God. And some of us took notes and went, we're not going to do that. So I remember not too long ago, before the last election, somebody came to me and said, hey, so-and-so just, who's the guy that does Operation Christmas Child? Franklin Graham. Franklin Graham endorsed Donald Trump, but not only endorsed Donald Trump, said Donald Trump was God's pick. And I went, I don't care if he endorses, but when you start saying this is God's pick, that's where I have it. And they're like, really? And I'm like, oh, yeah. Lutherans, we've been down this road before. We're a 500-year-old denomination. We have had trouble. Whenever we bring politics into the sanctuary, I just don't do it. So Monday, I got feedback, and I'm grateful for it because people are going, don't you know about him as a Christian? Don't you know about him working with young men? Don't you know about that? And I was like, no, I don't. In fact, Bill, who's at the Hour Center right now, came to visit with me and said, I think you need to understand some things. And I was like, wow, I had no idea. And then the memorial started, and I'm like, wow. Again, not on my radar at all, but our elders said, our pastor is ignorant. He's not stupid, he's just doesn't know. And we're going to make sure that he knows. And I am grateful for them for teaching me. This is why God puts us in community and says, no one person's as good as all of us put together. So thank you for being patient with me. Thank you to our elders for informing me of what was going on. My ignorance was not helpful to our ministry. Questions or comments? Okay, on to Jehoshaphat. One of those Bible stories that maybe you learned, maybe you didn't, maybe you even sang the song. But oh, do I have it on? There we go. So let's put this in context, because a Bible passage or a Bible story taken out of context is just out of context. This is happening about the time of Elijah and Elisha. Jehoshaphat was a good and godly king. He was the son of a good godly king named Asa. God had blessed both Asa and Jehoshaphat. So Judah was a powerful nation, but still a bit player on the world. The nation had been divided by now. Israel was off to the north, Judah's off to the south. They're no longer one big nation. You have 10 tribes up north, 2 faithful tribes down south. But they were to the point where they received tribute from neighboring nations, had a population of about 1 million citizen soldiers. Those last bits are not biblical truth. It's just kind of people looking and counting and trying to guess and looking at archaeology and stuff like that. Chronicles 1 and 2, however, were written, these were not journalism. So to talk about Gail's son, this was not somebody running around with a reporter's notebook going, what's happening here? These are written after the exile. So after God's people, the nation had collapsed. The unfaithfulness of God's people had led them to 70 years of remedial studies in Babylon. And they came out of that, and somebody said, we call him the chronicler, said, I need to write down the stories so that we don't repeat these mistakes. So think of the chronicler like a preacher, because preachers take old stories and say, here's how it applies to our life right here and now. That's what I do for a living. That's what the chronicler is doing. Probably written by Ezra, and I'm good with that. If somebody has a different opinion, I'm good with that. But to help people understand, here's why we ended up in Babylon, and here's how we should live so we don't make that mistake again. Questions, comments? Okay. So, into the story itself. The Moabites, the Ammonites, and some of the Menuhites came to wage war against Jehoshaphat. People tell Jehoshaphat, vast army is coming. So, Moabites, Ammonites, and Menuhites, these are the same ones that are currently troubling the people in the post-exilic community. So that's one of the reasons why this story said, the chronicler said, let's tell this story, because these are the same people we're dealing with. If you're going, hey, I've read the Bible before, who are those Menuhites? They were a subclan of the Edomites, and the Edomites came from, he was hairy, he sold his birthright. That's right, Esau. And they lived down around Mount Seir. But they all shared the common genetic link of being children of Abraham. They were children of Abraham, but had not chosen to follow God the way Isaac and those folks had. So if maps work better for you, here's what's going on. So they're swinging around, they're coming up. This is where Jehoshaphat is. And they're coming up. If you've been to Israel, and Gedi there is a national park down here, not far from where a lot of people go to the Dead Sea and to see the really thick water and the mud and all that. So Jehoshaphat inquires of the Lord, proclaims a fast for all of Judah. If you're going, why didn't we have this in church? Because I didn't want to make the reader stand up there for 45 minutes. The people of Judah came together to seek help from the Lord. Every town in Judah, they all can gather at Jerusalem. So they have resources. They have what the equivalent of the National Guard, citizen soldiers. But Jehoshaphat says, he's a good, godly king. I'm not going to put my trust in man. I'm going to turn to God. In proclaiming a fast, he's intentionally humbling himself and announcing, we're going to rely on God. And fasting has oftentimes been tied to praying. It is the idea, a couple of ways this works. If you've ever fasted for spiritual purposes. Here's the way it works for me. One is the amount of time and energy I spend on I love to eat, and I love to cook. So dinner can be a multi-hour thing at my house. By the time you're prepping, you're cooking, you sit down, you converse. You know, if you take all that out of your day, it frees up a bunch of time for prayer. And if on the and it's also one of those things that when your stomach starts to go, you go, oh, I need to remember to pray. For example, right now at 9:38 every day, my watch or my phone goes beep 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 beep, and that's because Matthew 9:38 is when Jesus says, "Pray to the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into the harvest field." And my watch has been beeping like that for a couple of years because I knew that I was not going to be able to pastor forever, and I've been praying for my replacement. And I've been praying to say that God would raise up the right person to follow me here. Because, quite frankly, I like you. I like this place. I've invested a lot of time here. I don't want to just go, well, I'm done. I want to do it. Yes, I thank you. But I need that reminder, or because I don't know about you, but prayer can get pushed out of my life really easily. I can end up doing any number of things when I should be praying. And I don't believe this is an accident that I will like sit down to pray and all of a sudden I'll go, oh yeah, I need to take care of this. I actually have gotten in the habit of I keep a notepad next to me, and that's to help me actually say, okay, because I won't trust my monkey brain to remember it, so I write it down and then I can go back to praying. But if I don't have that notepad with me, but oftentimes I'll find myself going, oh yeah, I should tell Lisa. And I'm like, no, just write it down, tell Lisa later. Um, so all of Judah, this is a point that the chronicler Ezra makes again and again. He's trying to draw people that are really tempted to atomize and start to just divide and scatter. And he's trying to say, no, let's pull together. And I think, so that Nehemiah had, so Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther, those books, or not Esther, Esther's back in Babylon, but Ezra and Nehemiah are about the return from Babylon. And one of the things that's happening is folks with resources starting to exploit the poor folks. And God had a way of saying, hey, we get that there's always going to be poor folks and there's always going to be people that are in need. And we're not saying you can only give charity, you can do a business deal, but it's not a forever deal. So if somebody comes to you and says, hey, look, I've got 8 kids and I can't feed them, can I sell you my son to be your farmhand and get enough food to feed my family? And one less mouth for me to feed, plenty of work for you. The deal in God's people said, yes, you can do that for 7 years. And on the 7th year, the young man goes free. And that's the way it works. You can't enslave somebody forever. Well, people were going, why would I want to give the kid up after 7 years? I just got him trained. And so Nehemiah had to come and say, no. We're not going to be a 1% and 98%. That's not the way we're going to live. We're going to work together as the people of God. So in this case, shared common enemy. And if you really, really hate Edom, read Psalm 37. On the other hand, God didn't hate Edom because he sent Obadiah. And you remember who Obadiah the prophet is not directed towards the people of God, but to the people of Edom. And it's part of our Old Testament. Seek. They came together to seek the Lord. So they're earnestly looking to God for help. And here's the question I ask myself and I ask us as a pastor. Is prayer like the last thing I turn to, or is it the first thing that I turn to? Do I remember to pray early and often? This came from when I was on my vicarage. So there had been a tremendous car accident, and I was sitting with the families while they were doing, and the doctor comes out, and it literally is one of those things. He's going, we have done this, and this. We've done all that we can do. There's nothing else that can be done. Then he sees me there, and he goes, oh, well, I suppose you could pray. I'm like, I don't think he meant to that, like, there's nothing left, but it was like, come on, man. You think we've been just sitting here? You think maybe God was guiding your hand while you worked? We did not have that conversation. But so, oh, detail on this one. First time a fast is proclaimed by royal proclamation. Um, However, individuals choosing to fast, big part of Old Testament from all along. We're going to skip Matthew Henry. Jehoshaphat stands up in the assembly, and he says this. So the people are all gathered at the temple. Solomon had dedicated the temple. Part of Solomon's dedication, he had um, prayed to God, God, keep your eye on this place, and hear the supplications, hear the prayers of your people when they pray towards this place. Hear from heaven your dwelling place. So, and then Solomon's prayer continues, when enemies besiege, and is anybody among the people, please, God, forgive and deal with everyone according to all they do, realizing you might be disciplining us through this nation that's fighting against us. So help us understand so that we learn to walk in obedience to you. So now we're going back to the chronicler's account. This is Jehoshaphat praying, you are the God of our ancestors. You're the God in heaven. You rule over the kingdoms. Might and power. No one can stand against you. So Jehoshaphat is kind of praying like Solomon did at the temple. And he looks back in history, which is exactly what the chronicler is doing. And so when who's included among your spiritual ancestors? I told you about learning from Lutheran pastors that went through difficult politics, and some of us learned keep politics out of the sanctuary because, boy, it can go wrong fast. No, that's a dumb slide. Power and might. Okay. God's, when Jehoshaphat tells God, power and might are in your hand, it's not like God's going, I'd forgotten. This is not for God's sake. In fact, if you read the Psalms, and by the way, I recommend that. It's a great way to increase your time in prayer. I read 5 a day. I'm not doing it right now, but when I have, 5 Psalms a day puts you through the Psalms in a month because there's 150 Psalms. And as you read them and pray them, you'll discover that there's all these times that the psalmist is telling God stuff about God. Oh God, you are merciful. Not like God's going, oh, I've forgotten, but it's just the psalmist needs to hear himself to remind himself that God is merciful. So, moving on. God, you drove out the inhabitants of this land before we came to here. So he's going back to the Joshua account here, and he's walking through that history. Give forever to the descendants of Abraham. If you remember all the way back, start or halfway through summer when we were talking about God calling Abraham, he promised 3 things: land, offspring, and blessing to the nations. And Jehoshaphat turns to those 3 promises. And again, not because God needs to be reminded because he's forgotten, but because Jehoshaphat and the people that are listening to the prayer need to be reminded. I just love this line. I have chosen you, descendants of Abraham, my friend. It's just lovely to think of God not just seeing us as servants or children, but with affection, like friendship. And there's a couple of times that various people are described as friends of God. And we are. God loves us not just like a grumpy father or like some, God is love something, but it's just, no, I actually like you people. I enjoy spending time with you. Okay, that's a repeat of Abraham as God's friend. Okay. Oh, I think Matthew Henry was every true believer. That's us. We are sons of Abraham. We are friends of God. We are assured of God's love by his dwelling in human nature in the person of Jesus, our Savior. Um, the people lived in it. We live in it. We've built a sanctuary for your name. And then he's quoting Solomon here, going back to the temple dedication. If calamity comes upon us, we'll stand in this place that bears your name. We'll cry out to you. You will hear. You will save. Um, okay. Now, prayer goes on. He tells God all kinds of information. You know, again, not because God needs to hear it, but so there's a who was the guy? He was one of the plumbers for Dick Nixon, and he ended up becoming a Christian in prison. Chuck Colson. Chuck Colson tells a story of being at a church where he was going to be the guest preacher, and they prayed over their preachers before, and they would do prayer time, and he is in the prayer group, and they are praying for him because he's going to be preaching, but they're also doing the prayers of the church. This is before church starts. And they're going, and dear God, please help Bob. He and his wife are struggling, and Bob is leaving right now, and he's driving that old rusty Ford, and he's doing, and Chuck is like, come on, God doesn't need these details. You know, we've got a church to get started. I've got a message to do, and it's going on. And then anyhow, the guy finishes with, you know, all of Frank's life story and the sad details of the marriage, and and you know, and they finish that prayer and they start church, and Chuck does his thing, and then on the way out, he sees this guy on the side of the road in an old rusty Ford. And he pulls up and he says, "Can I help you?" And the guy is like, "Yeah, my truck quit running." And he said, "Is there any chance your name is Frank?" "Why, yes. Yes, it is. Frank, I got to tell you, I'm wondering if God had your truck break down here because you might be doing something pretty stupid. Can we talk for a few minutes?" "Sure, I'm not sure what to do." And he walks Frank through all the details of Frank's life that were included in that prayer. And he says, "As a result, I know that you have people praying for you at your church because I just preached them. And I think you might want to try this with your wife instead." And he gave him some marriage counseling advice and said, "Now, can I give you a ride home, and you can come get your truck later?" And he was like, "That might be a pretty good idea." And Chuck Colson said, "I now get why sometimes we include all those strange details in prayers as opposed to saying, 'Come on, just get to the bottom line. We got things to do." He was like, "I got to learn to be patient." Um, So Jehoshaphat does a Chuck Colson prayer. I'm including all the details. We're going back over history from, you know, the Exodus, and you know, when they were not nice to us when we came through in the Exodus, even though they were cousins. Um, so he finally gets to the petition part of his prayer. "You gave us this as inheritance." Um, nope, we haven't even got to the end yet. Jehoshaphat spends 127 words on praise, telling God the great things God has done in his prayer. His petition is 5 words: "Will you not judge them?" 127, 5. I don't know about you, but a lot of times my prayers are like, "Hey, God, thanks for this, but here's my problem." And I can spend a lot of time detailing my problems and much less time on thanking God for his greatness. Um, Jehoshaphat is a convicting story for me. Um, and It's 194 in the full text, but, you know, or 94 of the whole prayer are just walking through the history of God interacting for his people. Um, so, okay, Jehoshaphat. Okay, let's skip that. Okay, Caesar land. You know, Kevin talked about how everything we have is God's, and Jehoshaphat's doing that here. He's saying, "This land, it's your land, God. You gave it to us, but we're managing it right now, and they are coming to take it from us. So this is your land." You're not just picking on God's people, they're picking on you, God. Um, and God, will you not judge them? Here are the 5 words. We have no power to face this vast army that's attacking us. We don't know what to do. Our eyes are on you. So, admission of impotence, admission of ignorance, and after doing that, of saying, I got nothing. Yes, I have 1,000,000 soldiers, but it's not going to be near enough. But I trust, God, that you have what it takes. And here's my request. I'd like you to judge them, not make us victorious, but God, you take care of business here. You judge them according to your will, because it might be your will that they come and reign over us for a time to lead us back through that cycle of repentance. Could be. Don't want it to be. I think we're being faithful, but maybe there's something we need to learn. The men of Judah, all their wives, their children, even their little ones were standing there before the Lord. So the gathered community, once again, that's one of the themes in Chronicles. God's people come together to work on things. So what does Jehoshaphat not do? He doesn't spend all his time getting his 1,000,000 citizen soldiers up to speed. Let's run drills. He says, we're going to spend time in prayer. How does he feel? He feels ignorant. He feels impotent. But what does Jehoshaphat do? He goes to God in prayer. So he faces into the reality of a situation. He asks for help from God and other people. He invites everybody to pray along. They're all fasting together. And he trusts that God wanted to help with the problem in God's way. You judge them, God. And I think that's my last slide. Questions or comments on Jehoshaphat? Once again, folks, when you're giving thanks and praise to God this week, give thanks and praise to God for the elders of our congregation. They are patient and kind men who helped me overcome my ignorance about Charlie Chris. Is it Chris? Kirk. Like I said, not on my list. And they were like, John, you need to pay attention to this. So thank you for doing it. I still won't do politics in church. Just won't. I will talk politics all day anywhere you want to. But I now understand his role as a speaker, a Christian speaker. That was not part of my coverage that I got.
You're not young.
That's true. I am not young.
Neither are the elders.
Yeah.
You don't have kids.
No. But I had a mom call me this week, and she was going, hey, and this is not one of our members. Okay, she was just like, hey, my son wants to go to this Charlie Chris memorial, and Kirk, sorry, and like, what's going on? And I'm like, here's what the elders of my church told me, and she was like, oh, okay, I feel much better now. I said, bye. He was, because she was like, I've never heard of this guy. I was like, neither had I. But yeah, yeah, and it was just one of those things. And I was like, wow, thanks for not just going, boy, our pastor's stupid, but instead saying, Pastor, come on, let me tell you something. So give thanks to God for our elders. We got good elders at this church. Go in peace, serve the Lord. If you have questions or comments, I'll be up in the lobby greeting for second service.